to do something other than what they do. You know, to ask them to make a work of art specifically about America would be about the farthest thing from their mind, and I just thought it would come back one right after the other. You know, it's not my thing, I'm too busy, I don't really do commissions, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. What I thought would be the easiest thing to do would be to convince people who are naturally driven to philanthropic causes to cough up some money for what seems like an obvious
do you
program.
frame it in both cases the same way as public service? Is that how you tell the artist, let's say, this is a...
You know, it was funny with the artists, I simply said that, you know, I want them to make a work of art specifically about America. Don't make it too big, we're going to put it in trucks. You know, I gave them I figure you don't go to famous artists and tell them exactly what to do. You just tell them a parameter and see what happens.
But the purpose...
So I had no idea what would come back, but what surprised me was how desperately they wanted to participate. That it was like, you're asking me to do something? You want me to participate? You know, it was...
Yeah.
Somebody said, you know, my God, this is so great. It's like, I feel for years like we've all been drinking the same Kool-Aid. And now you're saying, no, let's do this instead. And, you know, it's like, sure, let's put on a show. You know?
Well, that's the initiative, just 2 seconds on this because we didn't touch on it, but one of the big initiatives of the President's Committee that I'm working on very closely with Margo and George Stevens Jr. on trying to create a national artists' corps where that question can be asked of an artist in a different way than it's ever been asked before, where you can have a model, let's say, if this works in a year or two, where someone, a young artist might say, or a young person who's been involved in the arts and believes in the power of the arts for public service to say, I'm going to take this year and do artist corps, and that has a meaning distinct from anything else, where you go and you share the power of the arts in communities and in schools and overseas, and you find ways that the arts can do its unique thing, as we just said about technology, because there are unique things the arts can do, and that have not been exploited correctly. And in the current administration, there's a lot of backing for the ideals of public service, and yet the pragmatism of it is you need the mechanisms. So that's just another thing.
We had, I have to say, we have a program that we initiated, a pilot program that's bringing back some interesting results. We call it Artist Corps as well, and we're willing to give that name up if PCAW wants to give us some money. But the idea of it was to enlist young, creative people coming out of school in a relatively short program, which was to spend a few weeks, a month or something like that, and to go out into America with the idea of bringing America back to us, but bringing it back to us in a creative form. This is what we want. We want you to go out and discover America and bring it back to us in some kind of creative form, and that then becomes part of this dialogue that we're trying to.
That's a great thing. If we could join these, that's a wonderful idea that we didn't even put into our idea, into our proposal. But I think it's a really great idea. So maybe we can share. Our job also is that, for example, we had a conversation with Teach for America, and they fill positions that the schools ask to be filled. And what we're finding, or at least what they have told us, is that they aren't looking for arts education, and that's a real, it's a real challenge. And there's the acronym, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we, of course, this is cutesy, but anyway, it works. We want to make it STEAM, and we want the A to be in there. That's before we change the vocabulary. When it becomes something else, then we'll have to put it there. But that's our challenge.
I think we have one more question, and then we will sum up. Yes, you have the mic.
Is it on? Lisa, when you began this panel, and it's a great panel, by the way, you mentioned this crisis facing all the arts in terms of government funding, corporate funding, donations, etc. What strikes me, and it's not been mentioned through the whole program, has been the response by the arts community itself generally has been to raise prices. In the face of the problems they're facing, they keep raising prices, making it, if you use the word elitist, even more elitist. And the cutting edge efforts being made in all of the classical art forms, new opera, new ballet, new Broadway shows with cutting edge approaches aren't working very well because the people can't afford the prices they have to pay to see these. And so it entrenches the old style or the historic stuff. And I'm just curious, how do you get out of that cycle? It's not your virtuous cycle, Damian, it's the death spiral.
Honestly, it requires honesty. It requires a certain amount of, you can't have everything situation. I believe much more in the model that you lower the prices, or that you keep some things the same and you find ways to create the opportunities for a fall for dance, for instance, in New York, with $10 tickets for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which works brilliantly. And it makes a huge impact for the dance world, not only in New York, but it has an effect. You come to New York, you're a part of Fall for Dance, you go back, your board of directors is happy, your local critics feel like everything gets better. That's a virtuous cycle. You have to look much more long term. So, and then the other half of the honesty is looking at what the things you're spending all that money are. And some of them are based on old models that that's how we do it, and it's maybe not such a great idea. And there's a responsibility and an accountability that is required, just to go back to that supply and demand comment I made, by all of you involved in that side of things, to look a little harder perhaps at the nature of the art form. Learn more about it, be available to understand it better, and then you can have that conversation better about why is it that much money? Does it have to be that much money? Are we making the right choices? Just the same way as everything else.
You know, Roy, God knows we tried to reduce prices where we live, but I don't know. I wonder about this elitism. I don't know what that means, because people spend this kind of money. I mean, to go see Lady Gaga, it's $2,000 in Madison Square Garden. Now, that's even more than a Broadway ticket. So, slightly. And so I think, I don't get this, I don't actually understand this elitist argument, because I think it divides between, I think the division comes between entertainment and art. What you do is art. What we do is entertainment. And I think that it's baloney, because it all comes from the creative imagination. I think it's a false distinction, and I think, again, it's incumbent upon us to find ways of redefining this kind of experience that resists that kind of definition.
I agree with you, but entertainment is a very good word to bring in here, because to make the arts more accessible, to make them sustainable and viable, institutions are moving more towards an entertainment model. Museums they're making their shows more popular, blockbusters. That brings an audience, and that creates bigger ticket prices because these shows are more expensive to produce and someone has to pay for it. What Peter Gelb has done at the Met is genius in a certain way, but he's made the Met more theatrical and looked towards models of, again, entertainment to make it more accessible, more exciting, and to compete in a supply-demand situation. Do you buy a ticket to the Met, to Lady Gaga? Do you go to the Museum of Modern Art for $20?
Or do you go to the movie theater and
Wait
see
a
the
minute.
Met?
I think confusing art, making art not entertaining is not the right way. Shakespeare wanted to entertain the people that he was writing plays for. So I think great art is work that engages an audience. And I do believe that if the storytelling is good enough, or the emotional impact is strong enough, that's going to sell. I really do believe that.
It will, but right now the problem is, and I think this is a good sort of concluding note, I think that we've all of us in this room on the panel, agree about the value of arts in our culture. Irrefutable, it does so many things, but the bottom line is someone has to pay for it. And this is not the government's role. The government's very clear on that. The amount of money that they will put into this country's arts is minute. It's seed money. It's sprinkled here, there, and everywhere, but it's the private sector that has to pay for it and has to be incentivized to do so. So there are tax advantages to giving. Some of those are even disappearing. But it's up to today's philanthropists to support the arts and to create these, to sustain them and to allow for exactly what you're all talking about, which is imagination. It's really about this incredible imagination and creativity that can do so much for our world, create and solve so many problems. But the sad reality is it still has to be